Welcome to another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. I'm your host, Erin Jane, and today we are joined by Mr. Travis Gribble. He is a 24-year policing and law enforcement career, including roles as a SWAT commander, a team leader, a sergeant, and a deputy. Travis is now retired, and he's the founder of My Arena, an organization that is dedicated to first responder mental health education and advocacy, where he shares some of his own experiences and struggles to help combat the culture and stigma around getting help. Thank you for joining us today, Travis.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm excited to have the conversation.
Me too. So my very first question I have to ask, which I heard you discuss on another podcast, is have you had the opportunity to go hunting this hunting season yet?
I haven't. I'm terrible. I resorted to the fact that it's not going to happen. And there's something else to do that. Not only am I busy with what we're doing, but I'm just finished building the house. So even when I'm home, I'm like, so I just had to say, you know what, I'm done.
Not this season.
Yeah, because I'm definitely, especially for archery, I'm very mindful of just the practice it takes and making sure you are good to go with your shot. So I wouldn't go out there and tempt that. So my wife and I just, okay, it's okay this year. I've got plenty of meat in the freezer. I'm just okay. But yeah.
Well, maybe you need to have a conversation with my husband.
Next year,
he is a big hunter, and he just went up. So it's bow season. He goes up to a place in Vermont, and it's bow season there. And he also just likes to go up because he says, like, I need time to remember how to be quiet and how to sit still and all that kind of thing.
Because he hunts from a tree stand, right?
Yeah, it does like a little bit of everything, but yeah, he definitely has like a good couple of spots and a good tree stand. So he'll do bow season, he'll do like rifle season. I feel like there's a musket season, or I don't know. There's like, and then even like before all of this starts, he goes dove hunting in September in New Mexico, which is, just added to the hunting collection trips. So. But I hope that next year will be your year then.
Next year will be my year. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for coming on, Travis. Like, obviously, this is a podcast where we talk about the experiences of being a first responder and mental health challenges and aspects that we find ourselves going through as well. If you would be so kind, just to sort of start telling us what made you interested in entering a career in law enforcement in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get asked that a lot. And,
I bet.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it kind of, as you look back, like, man, I think I've always wanted to do it. And I've asked, especially family members, did you see it early on? And they would say, I was very much a rule and order type of kid. I like to go play Army in the woods. I just liked all this kind of stuff. And then I think it was just natural, attraction. And then, and I kind of knew I wanted to do that when I was around 18. My mom and I lived in an apartment complex where there was a police officer that lived there with his wife in the same building. So he would come home for dinner and we would just kind of shoot the shit. And then ultimately ended up doing ride-alongs with him. And it just, my first ride-along, I was like, yep, I'm in. And
like, I'm sold.
Yeah. So it was good. So I think it's something I've always wanted to do. Yeah.
And so you said that you sort of decided on that when you were 18. Was that the age that you joined, or did you wait a little bit longer?
No. Yeah, I kind of took some turns. I started going to school for criminal justice after high school, and then I was actually working for they were actually family friends that had their own business, and I started working there, started making a lot of money being a youngster, so I kind of put that law enforcement career on hold for a while, and then ultimately got back into it when I was around 24. But I think I always knew I was going to do it. It's just I was making good money and kind of didn't, just unsettled at the time. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I think as well, like I know, when like I entered at the age of 22, my law enforcement career, and I look back now and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I was just a baby. But
Mm,
I think the youngest person in my squad was 20.
yeah.
And you look back now and I thought, as an established 22-year-old, that I had gone and had some life experience, which you'd had to a certain extent. But I think having any form of life experience at that point, it becomes so important in your career and in your policing, because just being able to handle people and talk to people in a way that comes with a little bit of maturity and a little bit of age, like, it definitely helps.
I would agree, and probably all the youngsters will hate it if they hear this. But yeah, as I look back, like I honestly think maybe like in United States, maybe the good age is 25 is the minimum because
Yeah,
especially working for a big city department, we had lots of that 20, 21-year-old kids coming
yeah,
in. And wow, I mean, lots of good ones, obviously, but a lot, I mean,
yeah,
just a lot of kind of, wrangling in like, no, that's not how you treat people. This is how we do things. This is the why. And
yeah,
um, yeah, so I think maybe there would be something to be said to waiting a little bit longer in life before you started this profession,
yeah. But then I guess it's in this country too, especially, like, it's strange because then, your military is
right?
18. So it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, I
Exactly.
guess it's if it's one or the other, like, it's a bit challenging.
Yes.
So you said you were 24 or 25?
Yeah. So I finished up my degree, and that also entailed going through the academy. So
Okay.
back then, it was very hard to get hired on, and then for them to pay for you to go through the academy. There just wasn't a lot of that. So I actually paid my own way to go to the academy. And
Okay.
so, yeah, and this was in Michigan. And so
Right.
in Michigan, the day you finished the academy, you also then had your associate's degree. So, um,
Oh, wow. Okay.
but then it was, you're not, the technical terms are at this point, you're certifiable to become a police officer, but you have not, yeah, I know it sounds crazy,
I
but
was gonna say there's some Freudian slippage in that one, isn't there?
it's no, you're not certified. You don't have your licensing in place yet. So you try to
Yeah.
find this whatever job you can. And I started
Okay.
in a 1 square mile town the day after I graduated the academy, making
Wow.
$6 an hour. Just crazy. And yeah,
Jesus Christ.
and I mean, I know you're from Australia, but I don't know if you've heard the horror stories of small departments, but literally like walk in, throw me the keys and like, hey, here's the chief and the sergeant's number. If you need help, let us know. No training, no nothing. Like, okay, cool. And back then I thought it was awesome. I'm like, oh yeah, this
Yeah.
is big stuff. But now I look back, I'm like, that's ludicrous. Like, I cannot
Yeah.
believe, but that still
Um,
happens in small departments.
God, and well, and that is very much like and I don't know how much you know about, like, Australian policing, but what I find so fascinating about the policing or some of the policing aspects in America is, like, all of the small little towns and the sheriff deputies and the this and the that, and it just blows my mind. And it's even, like, kind of the same with, like, the fire department. Like, every city and town has their own fire department, whereas where I come from, you have one state police force for
Mm-hmm.
each individual state, and then you
Yep.
have, like, the federal police, and
Yeah.
that's it. That is, like, it. And so it's like, to come and I just think, I think so many things would kind of fall through the cracks a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
time if you've got agencies who aren't communicating with each other. And e- every fire department, police department has its strengths and weaknesses. But yeah, just, it's an interesting concept, and especially the fact of how often you guys just you work one up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every cop I see over here works one up, and it's really not necessarily the done thing back home either.
Hmm. I'm telling you, Erin, you're spot on because, for instance, so after I left that job to get my full time job in Michigan, I worked
Hmm.
for a sheriff's department, right? And so
Okay.
the geographical was about 569 square miles. So, but
Okay.
within there, we had multiple little, you know, 5-man police departments, township. And I guess it comes with maturity. You're like, this is really stupid because yes, like the communication, like,
Yeah.
okay, if this chief and this sheriff or these guys aren't getting along, we're not going to share information. You're probably dealing with the same suspects with the
Yeah.
crimes going on. It's like, what a better resource if we combined,
Exactly.
but I think it comes down to, us Americans. Everyone wants their little piece of control. So you have these little towns like, yes, we have our own department and we're going to do it this
Yeah.
way. And it's very strange as I look back now, and
Yeah.
that's typical. I think, man, I was just doing a podcast. I want to say the average police department in the United States has less than 15 patrol officers. So, and that's
Jeez.
the average. Yeah. And it's because
Yeah.
if you look at, like, even where I'm at, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, all these little teeny departments. Yes, you have the big New York LAPD where I was
Yeah.
from in Arizona, but the average is still very small, which is, it doesn't make much
Wow.
sense back.
I mean, and I think it's the same with a lot of things in this country from an outsider's perspective, but it's not a criticism, it's just like an
Yeah.
observation that
Okay.
you guys have certain things in place, or you do things for so long in a certain way that there would just forever be resistance to change anything.
Sure.
Like it's just like, well, this is how it is, and this is how it's always been done. And I think even that kind of goes into like the mental health aspect of everything. It's like, this is how it's always been. So for so
You are
many aspects, you kind of like, I'm banging my head up against a fucking brick wall, but okay.
I know. Yes.
So you started off at a small department and then you went to the larger department up in Michigan.
Yeah, and it still wasn't that large. I think when I left, we had 16 deputies, and then
Okay.
that was road patrol, and then we also took care of the jail. So it was very
Okay.
small, but I got my feet wet in a lot of stuff. It was actually, as I look back, it was pretty good for me because, yeah,
Hmm.
when you're out on calls, sometimes your backup's 10, 15 minutes away. So I think
Yeah.
it teaches you uh, how to speak to people, keep things
Hmm.
de-escalated as much as
Yep.
possible. And then I
Yep.
also had the opportunity that myself and another person were tasked with creating, back then we thought we were SWAT. Now, knowing what I've done now, we weren't. It was more like a quick reaction force of being able to hold down the fort until the state police SWAT team would get there. So I was able to
Yep.
stand that team up and come up with all the training and procedures, buy
Yep.
equipment. So that was good for me and a good experience, and it gave
That's
me the
cool.
real itch to take me on to my career, back or in
Hmm.
Mesa. So yeah.
Okay. And so were there like, was it any form of like lateral transfers between any of the departments up in Michigan?
Not in Michigan. So back then, so that when I went from the small town to the sheriff's department, there was no sort of lateral. Everyone had their own retirement. Now, when I
Hmm.
went to Arizona, that's when, I mean, I don't know if you pay attention to it, how big the lateral recruitment is across the country now because they're just, signing bonuses and all that. Well, Mesa in Arizona
Yeah.
was one of the, I guess, first ones really doing it, accepting
Okay.
out of state stuff. So that was the first time I ever experienced of like, okay, you're going to take my experience from here in Michigan and it's going
Hmm.
to benefit me to come to your place in Arizona, both
Okay.
financially and also for being able to put them for specialty assignments and that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
mhm.
And so how long did you work in Michigan for before you made that transfer down to Arizona?
2008. So, yeah. So I'd always wanted to go bigger city. And in fact, in
Hmm.
2004-ish, I applied with Las Vegas Metro PD.
Okay.
And I was almost through the end. In fact, my next step was to go there, do the medical, and get your conditional offer of employment. But
Hmm.
I got into a shooting, my personal shooting. Um,
Okay.
so, and it didn't feel right. Like, obviously whatever's got to go criminally, I got cleared from that quick, but then the civil part,
Yep.
it just didn't feel comfortable for me leaving. So I didn't take that job, but then I never
Yep.
lost the itch. So I picked that back up in about 2007. I started looking all over again.
Okay. Is
Mhm.
that how long like the process of the investigation of that shooting took? 3 years?
Well, the criminal was done in like days, like, yep, you're clear,
Yeah.
good to go back to work. But the civil lawsuit that took place, it actually did not, it did not finish until 2010. So even once I was in Arizona, I was still
Yeah.
flying back for I had to fly back twice for depositions. Um,
Oh,
and they ultimately ended up settling. It was just a bunch of bullshit, but that's part of the job,
yeah.
unfortunately, here in the States
I was going to
where,
say it's not like that back home.
yeah, yeah, you can get in these civil lawsuits and
Mhm.
it's so sideways now to where it's not even really about the case. They just try to push whatever government organization is defending you, push them into settling out of court
Yeah.
so they get a paycheck.
Yeah.
Literally what it's
Well,
become.
and I always find it, and no matter what it is in this country, whether it's a mass shooting, whether it's a police shooting, whether there's like any kind of incident, I swear to God, it's always within 24 hours that there's like the notification that like this person's lodged a civil suit. And I just, again, like I'm not from here, and I understand that there are like going to be differences in thought processes and everything, but I also I generally just kind of go, whether it's like a lawyer like going, oh, I'm just going to like do this for you because I see money to be got, but I go, aren't you just fucking grieving right now? Like,
Yeah.
isn't your most primal thing the fact that either you've lost someone or something's happened, and that should be your priority, not putting your hand out because you think you're going to get cash from a tragedy? Like, I always, that it just always makes me feel so fucking icky because I'm just like, what is wrong with you? What is your mind and your mental process to always jump to a quick buck? I don't know.
Yeah.
Just
You would think that, Aaron, but yeah, we've become such a litigious society that
yeah.
it's out of fucking control. I mean, it just
Yeah.
really is. So that kind of shit, it's like, yep, doesn't even bother me anymore. Like, this is stupid. They're gonna pay them out for, we didn't do
Yeah.
anything wrong, but whatever. They're
Yeah.
looking for a paycheck. And still, I remember with that in the beginning, it was hard for me to reconcile because I'm like, okay, over
Hmm.
here, within 2 days or whatever it was, 3 days, the county attorney said, yep, Travis is completely justified, back to work. Over here, you're telling me that some court is going to possibly rule that even though I did everything right, we still owe them money, and it doesn't make any sense. And the person that is no longer here, they did nothing right. It just, like, trying to
Yeah.
reconcile that shit is like you
Yeah.
can't. So
No, and I feel like it actually would be incredibly healthy for your mental health to be able to separate yourself and have that foresight to go, you know what, it's actually not even just about me or my actions, because I've been cleared and I know that I was justified and I did it, you know, in accordance with the policy of my police department and the laws that I am upheld to. That is now just like, it's not even a part of me anymore. It's between like them. Just,
yeah.
yeah. Otherwise,
Yes.
yeah, you would go nuts.
You do. Yes.
Okay, so we go from, you know, some great like tactical stuff in Michigan, and then you get on, and is it the Mesa Police
Yeah. So
Department in Arizona?
yeah, and so yeah, my stuff in Michigan as far as tactics, like, I was just touching the surface. Not even that. I mean, we hardly got any call outs. It was just about training, but it gave me the itch,
Yeah.
if that makes sense, to like, okay,
Yeah, it
I
does.
like I like this SWAT shit. Now I want to do it for real. Um
Yeah.
yeah, I went to, it's Mesa, Arizona, which is a suburb just outside of Phoenix. Uh
Okay.
and if
I've
you've
been
ever
I've been to Tucson before, but yeah.
Tucson? Yeah. So
I,
if you
I've been to Tucson.
yeah, Phoenix is like, I mean, all these bigger towns just,
Yeah. Hmm.
one on top of the other. So our town and Mesa, our city, I think they're like 530,000 people, and we had around
Wow.
850 to 900 officers.
Hmm.
And then obviously civilian staff, all the, crime scene and all that. So yeah,
Yeah.
really, a transition to a bigger city. Obviously not the biggest, but in the whole valley, I think we're at 7.5 million people. We kind of all were
Wow.
policing the same suspects. I mean, they went from city to city. We worked
Yeah.
together a lot with everyone. So yeah,
Yeah. Okay. And so, um, did you have a certain rank that you came from your Michigan places, and did you kind of have to like work back up to there, or was it part of like a bit of a lateral transfer that you maintained a certain level of rank?
yeah. So in Michigan, I was a sergeant, and
Okay.
when I when I went to Mesa, I had to start over again as a patrol officer. but they did give me and this is what most lateral programs do now. They
Hmm.
bumped me pay scale. They gave me 4 years
Okay.
experience. So even
Yep.
as a sergeant in Michigan, I went to Arizona making $15,000 more right away than I was
Yep.
in Michigan. And
Yep.
so, and then the other benefit is they normally you have to be 3 years on patrol before you could put in for a specialty assignment. So,
Yep.
but they bumped that down to a year and a half based on all my other experience. So, and
Yep.
I don't even, honestly, Erin, I don't even know if I was I know I was paying attention to the pay because that's a big move.
Aren't we
Yeah,
all?
a big move to go across the country. Like I better,
Yeah.
but as far as especially, I don't even know if I knew that until I got there, but
Yeah.
definitely
And
helped.
were you married at this point, or have children that had to like relocate with you as well?
So I was married. It's now my ex-wife, but I was married to my first wife, and I had two
Mhm.
boys that were 3 and 4. So we picked up
Oh,
and
wow.
moved across the country. So yeah,
Yeah.
and all of that went pretty well. I mean, the boys, they adjusted well, and it was good. And but now, I mean, Arizona's grown even more. I don't know that I would do it again. It's such a major city now, and throughout the
Hmm.
Phoenix, it's out of control. So, but back then it was a good move. So.
Yep. Yep. And so what? So you had to do like about a year and a half before you put in for specials and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Was the first thing you put in for like a SWAT position or a tryout, or how did that work?
Yeah, so I knew as soon as I got there that I wanted to do SWAT, but I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to be the new guy coming in, that,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, this
You
guy
want to be
just
that
wants.
guy.
I kept my mouth shut. I listened a lot, and I found out because at this time the Mesa SWAT team was part time, meaning we had
Okay.
collateral. And I'll tell you about that. Shortly after I made the team, we went full time. That was all I
Mhm.
did. Um, so I bid to a district and a shift where I knew a bunch of younger SWAT guys were
Okay.
working. So I just
Hmm.
wanted to be around them. I wanted to build relationships. I wanted to, find out if
Yeah.
this is something I was capable. Because honestly, Erin, I didn't know, coming from Michigan, I mean, this is a totally different level. I'm like, I was 38 years old. Like, am I going to be able to do this? So first and foremost
Yeah.
and I worked out and I did back then as well, but first and
Yeah.
foremost, okay, can I pass the physical challenges? Let
Hmm.
me see where I'm at against them with shooting. But yeah, so I
Yeah.
surrounded myself with them. And actually, I never came to them in the beginning. I remember one of them came and said, like, hey, you ever thought about testing for our team? And
Yeah.
so
Oh,
I'm like, yeah,
yes.
actually, I've been thinking about it. Yeah, so about a year and a half, almost exactly, I put in for a test, and they would
Mhm.
run every December of every year. We would have an open SWAT tryout, which would mean this is just to get you looked at to go to the SWAT school. So you had to do
Mhm.
physical fitness tests, shooting stuff, oral interview, and then they would also go and do peer reviews. So they'd go talk to people that you work with to see,
Yep.
are you humble? Are you professional? Are you a hard worker? And then if you get through all that, then the team decides if they want to invite you to SWAT school, which would be the February coming up. So in a couple months. So then
Yep.
I was asked to go to SWAT school, and that's 2 weeks long, 8 days in a row, no breaks. And
Okay.
we're work for if you are trying to get because we opened it up to other agencies that needed their people
Okay.
put through SWAT school, but it was mainly
Yep.
designed for people trying to make it onto Mesa SWAT. And so yeah, we were during school. I mean, you're getting your ass kicked working 15, 16 hours a day and
Yep.
studying and all this shit. So yeah.
Yeah. And is it like they're kind of trying to weed out the weakest links, or are they trying to build a sense of like camaraderie amongst the
Mhm.
people who are applying? Like, do they accept more than one person at a time? Like, how does
Yeah,
it work?
it's always based on how many openings they have on the team, and then sometimes they would have a list. And so
Hmm.
what you said is it based on weakest length or camaraderie? It's actually a little of both.
Yeah.
Because weakest link, definitely, if you just can't perform the basics that they would expect someone just beginning to be able to do, then you're not going to make it. but then they
Yeah.
also are testing, because there would usually be, anywhere from 5 to 10 of us trying to make the team. So you
Yeah.
have to work as a team within this team. And because then I became very involved with the testing process as the years went by. I mean, you're sitting back, you're watching everything, you're listening to
Yeah.
conversations. I'm watching body language, all of it, to see, are you going to be someone that we would want to be with us all the time on these call outs, all this stuff. So there's a little bit of that, both of that entailed
Mhm.
in the testing process.
Yeah. No, and I think that that kind of thing like definitely plays too, because you want to see, yeah, how you perform like under pressure, but also how are you treating your colleagues and your workmates and people that you are going to be put under pressure in that situation with. And I think that, if someone's really good at it, but ultimately they're kind of a dick, do
Right.
you want them,
Yeah.
on your crew? You might not.
Yeah. No, and I would often, once I got into a level to where I was, running that testing process, heavily involved in many different ways, I would often say, like, hey, I could have person A over here that they're, let's say, I don't know, come up with whatever. Came from the military. I don't care. They were SEAL Team 6, whatever you want to say. And they're
Yeah.
squared away tactics, but they're a fucking asshole. But then I've got B over here, not an asshole, great team player, and I believe that they're trainable. I'm taking them all day long, because this
Yeah.
person is going to become a cancer on the team and I want nothing to do with them. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so accurate because, yeah, like when you're spending that much time with people and going into, I mean, like I grew up in a different country and yet I knew of SWAT, like I heard of and knew of like all of the things that you guys would do. And we had our own version called the SOGIes, or the SOG, the Special Operations Group, which from my police force is what we had, and they would do sort of similar kind of stuff. But yeah, I think you want elite, but you want good people, good men.
agree. Mm-hmm.
So makes sense.
Yeah.
And so how long did you spend in the SWAT teams then?
So, yeah, so I made the team so February 2010 is when I went through school. I got invited to come
Hmm.
on as a probationary member. And then
Yep.
actually, just a few months after that, our team commander at the time, which was a rank of lieutenant,
Okay.
he had been pushing to make our team go full time because,
Mhm.
for instance, so I was part time when I started. I'm also doing patrol, but pretty much SWAT comes first. Like if there's a call out, a search
Yeah.
warrant, it's pulling away from our other jobs. And so
Yeah.
it was, quite frankly, pissing everyone off. Like, hey, these SWAT assholes, they're never fucking here on shift and we have to fill in. Yeah, I think it was just kind of the timing. This commander pitched it with a big
Hmm.
proposal, and they're like, called us in one day. We all get this page, and we're like, what the hell is this? Bringing us back to the special operations building. We're like, something's going on. And yeah, he said, I got the okay, we're going full time. And I think it was going to be 3 months transition. And we're like, hell yeah. So we went full time, and yeah, it
Yep.
was freaking incredible. Yeah, I just
Oh,
tons of fun, and I guess kind of a
yeah.
dream come true.
Yeah. And it was and I presume it was everything that you sort of had wanted it to be, or like the aspirations that you were like, this is what I'm working towards.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, I think my background enough. The downside of it is that, part of that went into my mental health stuff, because I'm definitely,
Mhm.
when I go in on something, it seems like my personality is I go all in, and, my, I guess the way I handled SWAT is that it pretty much became my life. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's just kind of the nature of the beast too, when you're carrying around a work phone all the time waiting for the next
Yeah.
call out, because we were no joke of a team, and we were doing 300 plus operations a year. So
Wow.
you are busy as shit. So it's like you
Yeah.
don't really ever come down. There's a couple guys on the team that were really good about that, but
Hmm.
95% of us were all like, yeah, you're just on it nonstop. I used to make fun of those guys, like, hey, get your head out of your ass. We had a call out. Where were you? Now I look back, you were probably smart. I was an idiot. But
Yeah.
Aaron, you know, I often say to be in a first responder career, for you to come out unscathed is pretty impossible, in my opinion.
Yep, I
I
agree.
think if I would have known what I know now with mental health wellness, I believe I could have incorporated that in a much better way and been
Yeah.
able to handle those stresses. Yes, shitty, horrific days, tired, but I didn't know what the hell was going on with me, and I just kept pushing even harder. So,
Yeah.
but it was a dream
Well,
come true. Yeah.
yeah. But I think as well, like, and from everything you describe, it sort of just sounds like, if you've got that work phone on you, and it's not just you're on call for like this 24 hours or this 48 hours, like if you're literally have the propensity to be on call like all the time, you're like living in this state of like hypervigilance that is not going to be healthy for your central nervous system and your cortisol levels and everything like that. Like it's not going to be feasible, and it's not going to be enduring because it's going to get to you at some point.
Mhm. And I guess, yeah. And so my dig on agencies that do that, I mean, we always needed more people. And it was
Mm.
always, you can't have any more. We don't have enough. So my dig on
Yeah.
as the agencies are then, no, we need to have people in place so that we would have, you know, enough of our team available that whatever, 10 at a time during this week, you guys are unplugged. Yeah, come to
Yeah.
work, obviously. But when you're on your off time, put your phone away. You don't have to come out,
Yeah.
but because then what it rolled into when we're always running short staffed, I couldn't, even though if you asked a chief, they would say, oh, yeah, they don't have to be on call. But me personally, and especially amongst our team, those are my
Mm-hmm.
brothers. Like, I'm going to die for
Yeah.
them. And so for me to set my phone down and not be ready to go help them if a call kicked out, to get in
Mm-hmm.
that mental space, it's hard
Yeah.
to do.
Oh,
So
100%. But then again, then that's like impacting your relationship with your kids, like your
oh,
relationship with your wife at the time, because then if you're never fully 100% present, and I'm not saying this is necessarily what happened to you, but just in like a hypothetical sense, like, but yeah, like then it's when you can tell when someone's not giving you their undivided attention, and it
for sure.
sucks.
Yeah. And that's a price we paid for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
every year we would have in November, like the week of Thanksgiving, we had what was called Family Day for the team. So we would
Hmm.
have um, spouses, significant others, children come out to the academy. We'd have all our
Yep.
cool shit out there. We'd have our bomb guys blowing shit up, canines doing all this stuff, but it was
Yeah.
us. It actually came from a military model from special
Okay.
forces of we're going to celebrate you because we know the sacrifices you make by giving us your loved one to help us do these operations. And then
Yeah.
we'd always have a banquet at the end of the year, but we were very much, we recognized the stresses we were putting
Mhm.
on people. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, we did it. We needed more people. It's not always good, but it is what
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's really sort of, forward thinking in that sense. Because I think I even remember like when I was a cop, our senior sergeant would get up at the Christmas party at the end of the year and similarly give that thing of like, oh, well, like they couldn't do what they do without your support, and they thank the spouses and the partners and all that kind of thing. But I'm now in that position as a
Yeah.
spouse, of obviously not in law enforcement, but of like a firefighter. And it it dictates, everything. It dictates how you parent, it dictates the nuances of your family life and your relationship and everything. And it's so very different. Like none of my other friends, like my close group of friends, like I have some other firewife friends who I've met like through my husband, but none of my other friends like get it. Like they
Yeah.
just, and it's no fault of them, but he's just gone, and that's it, and that's just how
Yep.
it is. And like I'm okay with it, and it's been almost like 10 years now, so I was his wife before we had kids, and he was always in the job. So it was kind of like all I ever knew with him. But I think it also does make a difference if you, like a previous relationship I had, he wasn't in law enforcement and never got it, never understood it, made everything more challenging and more difficult because it came from a place of, I think, almost like jealousy, because I got close to other men and, you know, had formed friendships with other men, and that was like threatening to him. And
Yep.
so I think like having that level of like appreciation and understanding definitely plays.
Yeah. And I mean, Erin, we've really, even though we did those things with celebrating the family, we really have left the family in the dark. I don't think,
Yeah.
you know, we have not prepared them. We don't give them the tools and resources as much as we could, any of
Yeah.
it. And yeah, you describing the nuances with family and everything. I mean, yeah, when I went back to the street after I promoted to sergeant, and just
Mhm.
my young officers that had younger wives with uh, small children and working holidays, working every weekend,
Mhm.
it, man, you see the stresses it puts on them. And I'm like, yeah, we just don't do enough to prepare, and we don't offer resources as much as we could. And
Yeah.
the mental health side of it as well. Like
Yeah.
you said, your group of friends, and I hope some of them have law enforcement friends, because if you don't, all your other friends are like, oh, yeah, we get to celebrate Christmas morning every morning, just like it says. Well, that's not part of being law enforcement or a firefighter, right? Like
No,
you may
not at
you
all.
may celebrate on December 28th, and that's just life,
Yep.
preparing for that. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like, you know, when I grew up, like my mum would, like my dad wasn't around, and you know, my mum would often have to work like Christmas. So yeah, we would celebrate on different days. So it's kind of all I ever really knew. And then so it didn't, like holidays didn't mean a hell of a lot to me because of that aspect. And then becoming a cop, because I was younger, and then I worked with a lot of older men who had young families. So I'd be like, well, I'll volunteer to work the 7 a.m. shift on Christmas morning so you can stay home and open presents with your kids. But the way that they did it on Christmas and stuff for us was that they would just do 4 hour shifts. So you'd
Oh,
come in and work 4 hours, you'd get paid for 8, but it made it so it like evened it out a little bit. And I
that's
always thought
awesome.
that was good. But
Good
yeah, no,
idea.
if my husband Eric, if he's gone, he's just gone.
Yeah.
He's just gone for 24 hours, and it is what it is. But again,
Yeah.
because I think it's something that I've always known, or I've always experienced in either my career or, you know, as being his partner, like I don't know, I think you just try to turn it into like a positive. And if it's like a nice holiday, like, you know, my husband did a shift swap the other day.
Mhm.
And so he was working with like a crew of guys who I don't know, and he doesn't, you know, rarely work with. And so I'm like, well, I'm the captain's wife. I'm going to do something nice. So I baked them cookies, and I picked up the kids from school, and we went and dropped off cookies, because I'm like, you know, I think it's nice to
Nice.
do like things like that, and
Yes.
it's the camaraderie and, you know, all that kind of thing.
Sure.
So
Yes.
I think it's good to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but yeah, totally tangent. Sorry about
It's okay.
that. So how long did you spend in SWAT until I think you said that you were like seeking promotion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I worked, so 2010, 2015 is when, I guess the fall of 2015 is when I decided to test for sergeant. So with our team, we had 3 team leaders that were sergeants.
Mhm.
So we always tried to keep someone ready to go in the ranks that they've come up through the team, right?
Yeah.
So we knew that a couple team leaders were possibly going to leave for different reasons. And so they
Mhm.
asked us, hey, is there anyone interested in testing? Which was always a big ask, because we had a really good full-time SWAT, take-home vehicles, all that stuff. And
Yeah.
but I knew I
All the
wanted to
perks.
promote. Yeah, so I volunteered and I tested, and then so the fall of 2015, and then I knew I was getting promoted January of 2016.
Okay. So in order for you to obtain rank within the SWAT section, you had to kind of go out to get the rank and then come back in. Is that how it was?
Yeah. So I was already, so within our team, we also had a position called assistant team leader, which
Okay.
was not recognized by the department, only within the team. And so it
Mhm.
was actually voted on by team members. And then I would be assigned to a team leader, kind of be in their right hand person. You
Mhm.
planned operations and stuff. So I was that prior to promoting. And
Yep.
then, yeah, you have to, Mesa's rule was if you promote, you go back to the street for at least 1 year working patrol before you could get back into a specialty unit. So,
Okay. All
mhm.
right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so tell me what going back to the street was like as a sergeant, and
Mm.
how was that different for you?
Um, yeah, it was really good. I mean, we're probably going to touch on this subject of my first day in training, and that's the call with Ruby. But
Mhm.
so there's that whole part of it. But
Mhm.
I actually, Aaron, I had a really good time doing it because
Mhm.
I brought a lot of stuff that I learned from SWAT back to my
Yeah.
patrol squad. And, we worked graveyards in the district where I came up with. It's like
Yeah.
hardcore inner city, major felonies going on all the time. And
Mhm.
so, and actually, from those first two squads I had, I think 6 or 7 of them ultimately tested for the team and became SWAT. So they all
Wow.
knew, and I think that's part of the reason they bid to my shift because they knew where I came from and that's where they wanted to go. So it was
Yep.
great. So I took them to the level of tactics as high as you could get on patrol,
Mhm.
with the equipment, the experience, what they're going to be able to do. And I had a blast. I mean, other than, working shitty shifts again and all that stuff, but I was very blessed to have some just hard chargers that,
Yep.
some like pulling them back sometimes. All right, calm down there, youngster. Um, yeah, I never had to kick them in the ass. They always wanted to go out there and just do good work and
Yeah.
bad guys to jail. So that was good.
And
It was a lot of
and that's the thing, and I think from, say, like, someone who would have been in, like, that junior, like, person capability, like, not necessarily SWAT, but we used to have, detectives come back, and again, like, they were trying to kind of get promotion to then go back and become, like, a detective sergeant or something, and they were, like, some of the best operators because, and to take nothing away from street level sergeants, because they had their own skills and knowledge and capabilities, but I was always very detective
Mhm.
orientated. Like, that's where I wanted to go. So having people like you kind of come back, and you would just, like, infuse the troops with your enthusiasm and your different take on things and your knowledge and all that kind of thing, like that, they were the best people to work with, because it was like, okay, I see how this can be, and I see what I can learn and what I can do, and I think it was always just so invigorating to work with people like that.
Yeah, I mean, they literally were sponges. So it was like I could, just dump this information on them and
Yeah.
just try to help them go. And now it's kind of actually fun because now there's a couple of those that I just, I stay in contact with the team, but now they're
Yeah.
promoting. So they're going to go. And so become sergeant, leave the team, and then go back
Mhm.
out and did like, I don't know, it's kind of like a proud dad moment of like full circle to watch them, go back and take some of that knowledge. And, they would
Yeah.
call me like, what do you think, boss, about me promoting? I'm like, hey, I understand you don't want to leave the team right now. There's no guarantees you get back. But I always tell everyone that was some of the best times in my life of just, I mean, we had a lot of fun, and
Mhm.
just working together, learning, it was good times. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's good. And
mhm.
so, I know that we sort of just, like, touched on one of your most challenging incidents that you sort of had in your career. Before we touch on that, did
Yeah.
you, from being a sergeant, did you make it back to SWAT after that?
I did. So not as quick as I wanted to, but it's just you never know how that's going to go based on
Yeah.
openings. So I went
Yeah.
back in the early part of 2018 is when I was brought back as a team leader. So, and that's where I worked in that capacity until I retired in 2022.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So it was good. It was a blast coming back and being a team leader. And Um, yeah, that was definitely one of my goals to get back to the team. Had a lot of fun and
Yeah.
had the, the operators make our job easy. Like they just do amazing work, and we just give them the tools and resources they need to do what they do best. So it was good.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Um, and so I sort of, if you're happy to, would like to sort of shift over to some of the mental health aspects that go along with being a first responder. And for anyone who has been aware of Travis, either with his My Arena organization or seen him on Instagram or anything like that, Travis has been really kind and really open in sharing a lot of his struggles and experiences along the way. And I know that there's like one in particular that you've spoken about previously. Would you mind
Yeah.
sharing that with me today?
No, I will. With a little bit of a caveat, I'll just, and I know definitely this is one of the, I mean, it's what I call my career call. But as I look back, hindsight being 2020, and we can get into this, is just, I
Yeah.
was not deep in shit my whole entire career. Things as I look back now of
Yeah.
like, man, that cup was getting full. But yeah, so this specific one, um, I talked about the promotional process. So it was actually
Mhm.
my very first day in the sergeant training program. What
Okay.
Mesa does is when you're on the promotional list, you get brought out and you go with a certain training sergeant. There's many, obviously, but these training sergeants are trained to just help me become a sergeant. You learn. I wasn't worried about like the emergency calls and all that because coming from SWAT, that stuff was going to be easy. Um,
Yeah.
but I shouldn't say easy, very familiar with. So it was something I
Yeah.
had done. But
Yeah.
the administrative part of it, doing time off,
Always the
reviewing
paperwork.
reports,
It's always the
yeah,
fucking paperwork.
freaking hell of a sergeant that I hated because I hated being in the office. I wanted to be out there playing with the team. So
Yeah.
I show up for work. It was like on Monday in January of 2016. And we
Hmm.
go through our briefing. We were going to work 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. We go through patrol briefing, just like everyone I think on here can imagine what that looks like. So we get
Yeah.
done. There's no calls for service holding for a sergeant. There's just,
Okay.
obviously the patrol, they've got to go out and start handling calls. But so there's nothing for us. So we went down in the office and started just going through that administrative stuff.
Hmm.
Well, a call kicks out on the radio that I'm listening to, and working in a big city, you hear lots of crazy shit. So, sometimes you let it brew for a little bit. Like, is this really going to be something, or someone just being dumb, or
Yeah.
whatever, trying to burn a friend? So the call was the person calling into dispatch said I just left an apartment where I had met another male for sex. We had met on some online bullshit. And when we got done with our stuff, he offered me a little girl. So I'm hearing this, but he wouldn't tell where he was and he would not give his name.
Yeah.
So to me, I mean, I could 100 different things. Is this some doper trying to burn another doper, wants us
Yeah.
to go knock on the door, whatever? I'm not even answering up. I'm listening, but like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, this squared away patrol officer, he was actually young, going to be coming off night shift. He wasn't even assigned this call. He kind of
Hmm.
floats in the area of this apartment complex and drives by this city park. And it's a shitty, shitty area of Mesa. He sees an individual that we describe as a tweaker. He's like an adult male, BMX bike, backpack, dope,
Yeah.
street level drug shit, right?
Yeah. Know it
And
well.
yeah, yep. And he can tell he's got a posture like he's got his hand up to his ear on a phone. So he pulls
Yeah.
into this park and he's going to go check this guy. And I honestly don't even know if he like, oh, I wonder if this is a call or if he's just like a heads up, like, oh, who's this piece of shit over here? So
Yeah.
he checks out on the call, and as he's doing it, you'll know this, and maybe some of your listeners won't, but sometimes when a caller is on with dispatch and the officer's on scene, dispatch can hear the bleed over on like, hey, you're out with our person. And
Yeah.
so that's what this dispatcher said, like, hey, that's our caller. So boom, we've got him identified, and now this is
Yeah.
a real person. And so when I hear this, I'm like, hey, we'll answer, myself and this other sergeant will answer. Now, this sergeant and I had already predetermined when you go to the training program for a sergeant, you can take 2 days, which are called limbo days, which means you don't do anything. You just sit in the passenger seat and watch that person do the job. And then you just then you can take over. But I said, nope, I want to go full on first day. Let me
Yeah.
take everything. So I go and we go to this apartment complex where this supposedly happened. and it's set up. It's designed like in the shape of a horseshoe, and
Okay.
in the center of it is a playground. It's 2 levels, and all the front doors and everything face this courtyard playground area. And there's
Yep.
no windows on the backside, so they can't see out into the parking lot. So
Okay.
we felt comfortable staging out there to kind of talk and see what's going on.
Yep.
So we meet there, all the patrol officers that were assigned, and there was actually a lieutenant there that he, quite honestly, was trying to say we didn't even have enough to go up to this door to see what's going on in this apartment. I disagreed wholeheartedly. Some of it, I was definitely pretty confident in my SWAT role. I didn't, not disrespectful, but I don't care what your rank is. I'm not afraid to say my opinion. And I'm
Yep.
like, I told Lieutenant, I'm like, Lieutenant, all day long, I can go up there with some patrol officers. Let me just knock on the door. It's kind of like what we call for narcotics a knock and talk. We'll see what happens
Yep.
when that door opens.
Yeah.
And I was going under the premise of, in the United States, exigent circumstances. It's one of the exceptions to a search warrant to where,
Yeah.
we possibly have someone inside that's in harm's way. We do not have time to wait for a search warrant.
Yeah.
So I wore his ass down, to be quite honest with you. And then finally he said, he's like, fine, Gribble, you're the SWAT guy. Take some patrol people and go knock on the door. I'm like, perfect. It's what I wanted to do all along.
Yeah.
So I take a couple of them. I say, hey, we're just in this apartment's on the 2nd level. I said, hey, we're going to go up there. 2 of you are going to be on either side of the door. I'll be behind you. And then we'll have a couple more patrol people up on this balcony. I said, just knock on the door and then I will make the decision. If that door opens, I will tell you how we're proceeding based on what I'm about to see or not see.
Had this tweaker actually seen the supposed child, or he was just offered?
He was just offered. Yep. And when he said, no, I'm not interested, he got the hell out of there.
Okay.
So we knock on the door, and almost immediately the door opens and a male individual answers, and he is dressed in a pink tutu, like a ballerina type outfit, and he's got makeup on. Well, that's exactly how the caller described this guy of the dress he was in. So that was enough for me. I said, hey, detain him. So they grabbed a hold of him. He didn't fight or anything like that. Very, very much no expression really at all. Okay. So get him pushed off to the side, handed off to other officers. We give announcements at the door. Nobody answers. So I said, hey, we're just going to do a search looking for anybody in harm's way. And so the 2 of these officers at the door, they pushed in. I come in behind them. I immediately notice off to the right that there was a closed door. So I said, hey, I will cover this door. You guys keep pushing through the apartment. Then when you come back, we'll clear this, whatever this was. And I kind of knew what it was based on the layout of the apartment. I was used to these apartments. It was a storage area / closet, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So they pushed through, they come back, they said, hey, we got nothing. And so I said, okay, we got this door. And it was small enough that I could do it on my own, even though they were there to, back me up if something happened. And I had my pistol out. So left hand, grab the door handle open. I'm clearing. It's just full of like knee high of just junk, boxes, bags, just shit. Yeah. And I don't see anything the first time. I scan it again and I look down about 3 or 4 feet in front of me, and there's a black trash bag that stands out to me. I couldn't even tell you to this day why, because there's lots of shit in there like that. So I holster and I go down to grab the bag, and almost simultaneously as I do, a little girl's head pops up. Never easy.
Take your time, Take your time. I don't know how you retell this all the time. I honestly don't.
So, she's awake. Her eyes, I can see her eyes moving, but she has gray duct tape across her mouth. Yeah. And I get her up out of the bag because I'm like, the bag is falling. Overwhelming, horrible smell. Later, come to find out she's in she's sitting in her own feces and urine. And so her hands are also bound with gray duct tape, and so are her ankles.
Yep.
So kind of hand her off to the other officers. We get the tape cut off. She's conscious, but she's just no emotion, just ice cold.
Yeah. Completely
Um,
disassociated.
yeah, shaved head, very malnourished, just not good. So I already had fire and medical on standby there just in case we did find someone. And
Mm-hmm.
so we got them there right away, and they came in and got her.
Yeah.
The sergeant that was with me, this is no dig on him, but he broke down emotionally and couldn't continue in the call. So
Yeah.
he offered to have another sergeant come and help me. I said, no, I got it. I can do it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we go through this whole process, have detectives come out. Um, just I mean, Erin, at this point in my career, there wasn't really much I don't think I had not seen, from the murder
Yeah.
suicides, homicides, the um, child deaths. I mean, I'd seen it all.
Yeah.
But this one I immediately knew. I don't remember ever feeling my heart race as fast as it did that day.
Mm-hmm.
Just like hot heat. My body was hot, just felt this pressure. But I pulled it together, and I pushed through. We handled the
Mm-hmm.
case. I took her. We went, I went with another officer. I went to be there with them, um, to go be with her at the hospital because obviously she had to get
Yeah.
examined, and that was rough. The nursing staff, one of them even comes out, she's vomiting because of the extent of the injuries. And this was our children's trauma unit in Mesa, this hospital, like they see everything.
Yeah.
So it was just it was complete soul shocker. So yeah.
Yeah. It sounds that
Hmm.
way. My goodness.
Yeah.
Um, I I honestly can't imagine what it's like to have to retell that and relive that as much and often as you do. So I just want to say thank you for sharing that because I can imagine it rips your fucking heart open every single time you do it.
It does. And people often ask me that, but Aaron, I do it because I'm hoping we get through to other people, because I don't want them to end
Yeah.
up like me. So,
Yeah. And
and
I
yeah,
understand that.
I mean, from an agency's perspective, it was kind of shit response. I mean, we were all back to work the next day. The most we got was some mandatory big debrief with a bunch of people in the room that, like, hey, does anyone want to share their feelings? And no one fucking said a word. And
Yeah.
obviously, hindsight being 2020, we didn't take care of our people, and I
Yeah.
unfortunately was one of those. And but then my ownership is that I put my career in ahead of my own personal stuff, because I was just worried if I told anyone what I was feeling or struggling with as the months and years went by, that am I not going to be able to get back to the SWAT team? Will I not be
Yeah.
considered? I had a pretty good reputation. I'm not going to be this guy I said I was, all of it.
Yeah.
So the culture really hit me with this, to where,
Mm-hmm.
it just, it was not, um, it was definitely not celebrated when you came forward and said, hey, this call kicked my ass. I need a little help. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, describe to me what, like you said, were sort of expected back at work like the next day. Like, how are you in a personal sense and like the hours, days, and weeks after that call?
Yeah. Well, I had recently been through a divorce like a few months earlier. So I was alone other than the times I had my boys. We had to have them week on, week off. So being alone
Yeah.
sucked. So my go to was to work more. And
Yeah.
then when I was home, I turned to drinking to try to cope.
Mm-hmm.
The sergeant that I was with, because obviously I was just starting that training process,
Yeah.
um, he's like, yeah, we will never talk about that again. We never discussed it again. It was like, nope, not open for conversation. And so I
Like he
just went
said
on.
that to you, or that was the
But
indication you got from him?
no, said it to me. Yeah, because I tried to talk about it, and it's just, and again, no dig on him. He didn't know how to cope. In fact, I know he has had some rough times. He's no longer there, but I don't know specifically, but I would imagine this is something that has to do with it. And yeah,
Mm.
Erin, I buried myself in work. I dealt with night terrors. I dealt with, just extreme hypervigilance. Uh,
Mm.
my anger, my rage was out of control. Didn't know until I went through therapy and understood that, yeah, that's a sign of depression. And didn't understand my thought of depression was someone laying in bed, couldn't get out of bed every morning. They just cry all the time.
Yeah.
So I didn't, I guess was my outlet. I did cry at times where, yeah, I'd handle a call and then go find a dark corner and tears would come. And I'm like, not knowing, but I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me?
Yeah.
And then who am I going to tell this to? So I just
Yeah.
kept pushing it down, and the calls never, I think from that day forward, the calls never were the same to me. I mean, I specifically remember within that first year, a couple other murder suicides with children involved. And it was just like, I wasn't reconciling that another human being could do this to other human beings, even though, again, I'd already had a pretty lengthy career. But
Yeah.
when whatever the reason, obviously that call is a big deal, but it doesn't have to be that call. It could be something for someone else that when your call hits you, we never know which one's going to push you over
Yeah.
the edge. Like everything changed for me on that day.
100%. And I think it's like you use the analogy of your cup being too full, and then there's I think a common other analogy is like the backpack with like the rocks
Yeah.
in it and all that kind of thing, and sort of not like an analogy, but the obviously being a cop, you would know like Locard's principle of exchange, and it's
Yeah.
normally to do with forensics that like every contact leaves its trace. Well, I look
Mhm.
at that from the emotionality side of being a first responder. And I think even if it doesn't affect you necessarily at the time, which obviously Ruby's case did, but the culmination of so many things, they leave their imprint on you, whether it's
Mhm.
psychological, whether it's emotional, whether it's anything. Like I think everything leaves a trace on you. And like you're
Yeah.
saying, that was clearly one of the most horrific jobs that anyone could attend, and then to have that on top of all of the other things in your career, and then all of the rest of like I never went to a murder suicide in my career, and granted my career wasn't as long as yours, but
Mhm.
it's you've having this trauma exposure compacted and cumulative like constantly, like it's unsurprising that it's going to break people psychologically, because we're not given the tools most of the time to know what, like you're saying, like you were getting emotional and you're like, what the fuck's wrong with me? It's like, no, actually you are reacting in a very normal way, but you're not taught that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we really, like you said, the word cumulative, as I look back now, I'm like, man, we're a bunch of fucking idiots that we did not think that this stuff was going to add up. You think about, what, and what really hit home about that. I've had the opportunity, I've met since I've been doing all this, some pretty um, high speed military special operations type people. And
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting to hear how they perceive us, because when they're on missions, they're overseas, they're away from day to day life. Not that
Yeah.
what they experience is horrific, but it's a different, because they said, if we don't understand how you like go do your shit, and then that night
Oh,
you're hanging out
definitely.
with the family and supposed to be like, hey, everything's good, I'm over here, and it just doesn't happen that easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The cumulative stuff, and man, we've got to educate. And like what you said, normal human response, I say that all the time in my presentations. All this
Mm-hmm.
shit that I'm describing to you about post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic stress disorder, that is the normal human response to all this shit you're
Yeah.
dealing with day in and day out. So we have been
100%.
lied to in the first responder community, because we've been told, no, that's weakness, that you're dealing with that. Keep it to yourself. If you feel that way, you've chosen the wrong profession. Holy
Yeah.
shit.
Tuck it
Can't
down.
that. It's just unacceptable.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is, yeah, it's so, and I know we'll sort of like get to it a little bit more like later when we talk about your organization. But I was talking to a girlfriend I interviewed a couple of episodes ago, and we were all taught on like it's either the first day or the first week of when we entered the academy, you've just gotten tickets to the greatest show on earth. That's what we were told. And
Okay.
then, you know, my friend turned around and she's like, but at what fucking cost?
Right.
There
Yeah.
was never anything about that.
Yep.
And I guess, yeah, I mean, like, I think you said that you started back in 1996, like, and you said, you know, you went through and you got an associate's degree and everything like that. But what was, you know, the conversation like back in like the 90s and all that kind of thing in regards to mental health? Like, was there any?
The only thing, and I actually talk about this too when I speak, the only thing that I can remember is I remember us having to watch a movie about all these police officers and I mean, obviously this real life people that had been in officer involved shootings and they had been shot. And it
Okay.
talked about how they survived, how they fought through it, the mental like toughness,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing about like, and also the trauma that comes with all this stuff. None of it. It was just
Yeah.
literally like, yep, just suck it up. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't, I'm sure that's been told to me, but it's just like our culture. Like we didn't talk about it. And my only association with PTSD back then was that's what I considered a Vietnam veteran being homeless and drunk on the corner. That's someone
Yeah.
with PTSD, not me. And that
Yeah.
was, that
Yeah.
was ignorant. It was a lack of understanding because I had never been taught.
Yeah. And you know, I guess like we can look back with the a certain level of kindness that maybe no one fucking knew back then. But
Right. Maybe.
there there also is a responsibility that is placed on organizations who are sending their troops out to have, and look, I know I'm asking a lot from police departments to have fucking foresight, and I do get that, but you feel like there should have been, you know, and it's the same even like with say like firefighters at the moment, like you know, and the same as police officers, but like there's more line of duty deaths to suicide than
Mhm.
you know. Sorry, there's more deaths to suicide than being killed in like the line of duty. But obviously, I'm like heavily invested in the firefighter side. But it's cancer and suicide are the
Mhm.
two things that kill
Right.
firefighters the most. And I know that there's like this big push to get cancer screenings and I know that they're doing that a lot in Massachusetts at the moment, but you're also like, okay, but what about the other fucking elephant in the room over here? Like what's going on in
Yep.
regards to that? And that needs to be first responder wide. And I understand like that's part of what you're doing with you know with your organization is trying to draw attention to that and like putting yourself out there in such a vulnerable way and sharing your shit in something that still obviously affects you and always will, but it's to your own detriment, but you're doing it because you're like, you know what, like if I can help one person not go through what I've gone through, then it's going to be worth it.
Right. Yep. Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. Like you're talking about, I mean, you said a lot there, but talking about the foresight,
Yeah.
I don't know at what year we want to say, okay, like you all as an organization, you need to know. But what I can say now, Erin, is if you are running a police department or any first responder organization right now, and you aren't dealing with mental health stuff, you need to get your fucking head out of your ass. Like that's where
Yeah.
we are. Because
Yeah.
there is no more, oh, I never knew about this. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, this is
Yeah.
shocking.
That
Bullshit.
plausible deniability is fucking gone. Yeah.
And then you talked about like the cancer screenings and stuff. One of the things I talk about and like where I'd like to see brain scans. So brain
Hmm.
scans got very big. A lot of people that didn't know in law enforcement, maybe you've heard it through like the NFL with TBIs,
Yeah.
traumatic brain injury. It got
Yeah.
really big with the military after Afghanistan and
And
Iraq because
is it CPE as well? Like,
that
is
CTE,
CTE?
yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And then our military, because in Afghanistan and Iraq, they used more explosive breaching than they ever did. Plus, guns going off next to you.
IEDs. Yeah.
So these brain scans can show PTSD. They found now depression. So why
Hmm.
wouldn't we, at the beginning of a career, we had brain scans, and then throughout, we're doing these scans to see where someone's sitting with this stuff. It seems
Yeah.
very logical. And I bet
Yeah.
you 10 years from now, if we talk like I bet you that could be part of it. But again, it's, what it always comes down to is everyone's like, how am I going to pay for that? I don't give a shit. Like, your people go out there and they pay a heavy price for
Mm-hmm.
a 20+ year career. This is the least that we can do as a society to take care
Yeah.
of our first responders.
And also I think it comes into play too, like, and I think you might have mentioned it, which again we'll get to. I know you started a podcast recently where you were chatting with your publicist Taylor, and about like my husband's fire department has had like a very strong union in the past, and they've negotiated like really good things, like, and I think you mentioned like getting the unions on board in regards to this mental health stuff,
Yeah.
because I know they've been, pushing certain things in regards to like the cancer stuff and the cancer screening. Well, like you're saying, like if this is included and the union pushes for it, there's going to be more backing behind it. And if it's not just one police force or firefighting department's union, but like an overall union thing. I mean, obviously, I know there's the IAFF for firefighters, and I presume the police would have something similar in this country too. If that gets behind it, there's going to be more likelihood that something such as important like that gets implemented.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that was the first time I ever voiced that thought as we were talking, Taylor and I were. But
Mm-hmm.
um, and I get it. I've been a part of God knows how many union contracts throughout my career. But
Yeah.
the number one thing we're always thinking about is, are my benefits going to cost me more, and how much is my pay increase? I
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
However, yeah, I think our unions could get behind something like this and say, no,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to offer this day one of employment. This is
Yep.
going to be, the city's going to take care of it, or the county, whoever, and then we're going to offer it whatever. I would have to we would, get it from the experts. How many years apart should we have this
Yeah.
testing? And then it just
Yeah.
follows you throughout the rest of your career. But
Yeah.
again, it comes to that, Erin, is they're going to be scared because they're like, fuck, what if this shows, yeah, there's a cumulative shit to all this, and how are we going to pay for that? Well, you better figure it out because you wanted to be running this organization. So put your
Yeah.
big boy
And
pants.
then but I guess, I don't know, like maybe again we were talking about how litigious a
Mm,
community certain countries can be, like then maybe part of the fear is the fact that then they kind of worry that they're going to get opened up to litigation as a result of brain trauma. Like, I don't know, I think that's
I know.
another thing to bridge to cross or whatever, but oh Christ, I don't know. But I agree. Like the forward thinking needs to, because I feel like organizations in the first responder realm, they're always playing catch up, always,
Mhm.
always, always, and
Mm,
they don't need to be. Like there's enough data out there. They need to be forward thinking, and especially because I mean, you would have seen it. Like, who wants to be a cop anymore?
yeah. Yep.
Like even back home, like I was talking to my friends back home last trip I was there, and like private businesses are poaching coppers, going, hey, we'll give you 100 grand, we'll give you a car, your own phone, and like normal work hours, no night shift, no shift work, doing basically like private investigation stuff for like work cover, and they're just
Mm,
poaching them left, right, and center, and
wow.
people are just like, yep, because like this fucking sucks.
Yeah. Yep. It is definitely recruitment and retention are two of the biggest buzzwords right now, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, understandably.